Chapter 11. This chapter is about detecting deception. For some of you, this will be the last week that you have to write your paper or complete the quiz. Again, a reminder, I strongly encourage you at the very least to do all 12 quizzes. Your two scores or the two lowest scores will automatically get dropped. If at this point you have missed a week due to extra spring break or whatnot, still keep going with the papers. For some of you, though, we have kind of hit the 10th chapter of the semester, chapter 11. Because we skipped chapter 10 last week, and therefore you will have all of your completed points at this point if you are happy with your grade. So this chapter is all about how we're going to detect deception with regard to nonverbal communication. We have common stereotypes about what deceivers will display when it comes to deception. In fact, if you remember from the chapter on eye contact, we talk about the idea that when you look up and look to the left, right, that's a classic stereotype or sign of deception, right, as in you're searching for information, right, in the creation portion, versus just pulling back from information you already know. We have a lot of beliefs about deception that go outside of just looking up and to the left. We believe people will avert their eye gaze, right, so they'll look away from you. They won't maintain eye contact. They'll display a lot of fidgeting or self-touching behaviors. They might play with your necklace or appear to be nervous. We think people are going to sweat. We think people are going to display the more nervous type of behavior displays, right? So not just our physical sweating, but maybe leg fidgeting, self-touching. We're going to use more indirect communication, right? So we'll kind of flub through words as I've just done or have done throughout the chapters, although I hope that's not a sign of deception, more just a sign of, distraction. What the research is looking for in this chapter is kind of stepping past what are the stereotypical signs of deception and how are we going to interpret the everyday deceivers. We have many tools at our disposal. If you think of, kind of big picture deception, you often think of criminals, and this chapter talks a lot about police officers and interrogation tactics and the use of like a polygraph machine to determine deception. Okay, so we have all these tools at our disposal, but for the most part, what are our chances of being able to accurately predict deception in other people, right, in our everyday communication? Because we can't hook up our relational partners to a polygraph, right? And that's not the way that we can figure out if they're lying to us about what they were doing last Friday. So it's important to recognize that there are certain groups of people that are better able to pick up on deception. So in the textbook on page 236, they talk about different groups, and you as college students are actually a significant group that is able to pick up on successful indicators of detection. Okay, the most prominent group, though, is actually prisoners. So prisoners can pick up successfully on detecting deception about 32% of the time, college students 25% of the time, and then people in the police officers, detectives, prisoner guards, around about 22 to 24% of the time they can accurately pick up on deception, okay? And there are certain things that we will do that kind of are dead giveaways. It's interesting if you look at these groups based on why their lifestyle might have contributed to their ability to pick up on deception, particularly in relation to prisoners. So prisoners are in, the criminal lifestyle. I'm not saying prisoners are liars, because clearly if they've gotten caught, they've gotten busted in their lie. However, when you look at the idea of prisoners, what you're looking at is that people that may have had a rougher lifestyle, living on the streets, right, or have a street life where they maybe been able to pick up on deception as a survival mechanism or a way of being able to commit their crimes. So I'm not going to say it takes being a liar to be able to pick up on lies, but maybe that idea of immersing yourself in a more deceptive type of lifestyle is going to make you, more prevalent at being able to successfully detect deception. Okay. Then we look at how we detect deception, and really what we're going to use is baseline behavior. So in order to notice if someone is deceptive, we have to be able to have the baseline for their truthfulness, right? So if you look at a polygraph machine, what they often will do is set a baseline question. So the first question is often maybe their birth date or their mother's name, something that they probably wouldn't lie about, also what they have verification of. So I was born October 19th, 1983, that would be your baseline. So whatever, my disposition is at that given time, then you can base my deception off of that. So if I'm very calm, right, and my hands aren't sweating, they don't sound very nervous, and then you ask me the next question, which would be, did you commit X crime, right? My anxiety is going to shift, right? So my demeanor is going to shift, and my nonverbals are predictably going to shift based off of that. Okay, so we need that baseline, kind of the baseline standard before we're able to detect deception. What also plays into deception is the idea that a deceiver will actually feel guilty. And this is where it kind of gets into the cognition or the psychology behind it. So think of the last time that you lied. First of all, let's get past this idea, right, that we're not liars. Okay? I don't classify myself as a liar as a characteristic, but we all have lied. In fact, something I can think of right off the top of my head is my weight. I'm entirely positive, aside from my doctor, nobody knows how much I weigh. I'm not even sure at this point how much I weigh. So I've just lied about it so much in my life. But it's a simple lie. We have those white lies is what I tend to think of it as. It's not doing any harm to people. But think of all your everyday lives. Do you feel guilty about them? I mean, I don't feel bad anymore about lying about my weight. Does it make it okay? Some of you are probably cringing, thinking, well, that's really immoral or unethical of you. But we all have these kind of lies, maybe lies we tell ourselves, or smaller lies, or less significant lies. Do you feel bad about them? Okay, so we have to make sure that when we're talking about detecting deception, and we're talking about this idea that people are going to display different nonverbals, we're under the premise or the condition that people are going to feel guilty, right, for doing that. We're also under the condition that it is more cognitively complex to lie. So in a given situation, it is more challenging, right, to think of a lie than it is to tell the truth. That is why we give these extra nonverbals. There are some of you out there who find it very easy to lie. And in fact, it's often easier to lie. Imagine if I said to you, do you like my necklace? Okay. The simple answer, the easiest answer is yes. Social norms of appropriateness are going to say, yeah, whether you like it or not, right? You like the new haircut, your butt doesn't look big in those jeans. All of those kind of standard set social norm answers actually make it easier, even if it is a lie. So again, if you don't feel guilty for it and it's actually easier to lie than tell the truth, we might not be displaying some of these nonverbals that they talk about in the textbook. Earlier I mentioned some of the different behaviors or stereotypical behaviors such as gaze aversion or self-touching that will indicate that you're a deceiver. So a skilled deceiver, right, is going to be somebody who's going to be able to manipulate those. Now, that's where I have a little bit of an issue with this chapter, because inadvertently, if I'm going to be talking about, or the text is going to be talking about how to detect deception, it's going to, in turn, make you actually a better deceiver, right? Because you'll know on what signs, okay, that means deception, so I'm no longer going to do that. Maintain eye contact, right? Then people will think I'm telling the truth. And in a way, I feel like I'm creating con artists. So I'm not going to talk about a lot of these things in great detail, recognizing that for the most part, nonverbal communication is difficult to control because we don't walk around with mirrors in front of us. So even though you're going to have these tools at your disposal and say, okay, now I know the classic signs of deception. So if I want to lie to my significant other or my parents or a friend, I'm going to, actually enact these. Most of you won't be able to do that, at least do it successfully. I'm kind of hoping because of the fact that nonverbal communication is difficult to control. Some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, Jenny, we've just talked about all these chapters on the different types of nonverbal. We just had a chapter on impression management. You told me I should be able to manage my nonverbal and control it. And now you're crossing your fingers hoping I don't. And the answer to that, it does seem a little bit, hypocritical of me. But I think everything can be used for good or for worse. And this is a case where I hope that this chapter doesn't teach you how to, manipulate people and be more deceptive, okay? But I do hope it makes you a little bit more accurate at detecting deception. Although, again, I want you to recognize everyone lies. And we often will say, well, if somebody lied to me once, I'll do it again. And you throw an entire relationship away because they broke your trust without recognizing that, wait a minute, have I lied to my significant other about where I was or what I was doing because it wasn't doing them any harm and it wasn't detrimental to the relationship? So I want you to take ownership of this idea that since we all do lie, it might not be the end of the world if somebody else lies to us, especially when it comes to the idea of a high-stake lie versus a low-stake lie. Okay, so in this chapter, we talk about high-stake lies versus low-stake lies. Specifically, low-stake lies are lies, the everyday lies, right? That about my weight lie, lying and calling in sick to work in line. You have very little anxiety associated with them, right? The consequences are not severe. So I'm not going to get in massive trouble if you find out I weigh 10 pounds more than I told you. And then it also occurs over a short period of time. So I'm not, although I guess I've been lying for past 15 years about my weight, right? I'm not continuously holding on to it throughout a day, right? Because the consequences are really severe, or not severe, they're really insignificant and not going to impact you. High-stake lies, on the other hand, are the big lies in life, often related to some type of criminal or maybe moral or immoral activity, okay? So this chapter, when they talk about high-stake lies, are referencing a lot of interrogations or police interrogations, right? So I guess I should say accused criminals, not necessarily true criminals. You have a lot of anxiety. The consequences are severe. You lie over a significant period of time with high-stakes lies. In your interpersonal relationships, a great example of this would be an affair. Okay, not cheating on one night, but continuing to have an emotional or sexual relationship with somebody outside of your relational partner. For the sake of this class, I'm going to stick to low-stake lies, and I'll explain to you why I'm not going to go into great detail of high stakes in just a minute. But on low-stake lies, there are some classic, right, research-founded nonverbals that we display. All of these are on page 243 in a chart for you. So I think most of them fit the general stereotypes of what we think of as far as pauses, right? We have a lot of time between pauses, a significant amount of pauses, right? We are less likely, we have shorter answers when we're going to deceive. We tend to speak very quickly. We'll do a lot of self-touching behaviors or object-touching behaviors, self-adapters, object adapters. We look away more. We have these fake or masked smiles. Okay, so these are kind of the stereotypical signs of that we're not telling the truth. Okay, that we're going to be deceiving you, even if it's for your benefit. And I don't want you to forget that. Okay, we often think of deception as a way to make ourselves look better, right, or detract from some type of negative. But we also lie or deceive people for their own benefit, such as, does my butt look big in these pants? And my boyfriend saying, nope, looks great, looks small, right? That's the answer every single time, even if it does look big. So it's important to recognize that sometimes people lie to us to save face and not hurt our feelings. And sometimes we're actually grateful for that type of deception. When they go on to talk about high-stakes deception, this is page 248 through 252, I want to point out something that is critical. And why I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about high stakes is because of their research pool. Okay, their designs are all set around police interrogation. So their sample is in relation to criminals and police detectives. And to me, that's not what you're going to experience on the day-to-day basis. I'm not saying it's not credible, and if you are going into law enforcement or criminal justice, I strongly encourage you to look at some of the nonverbals that are associated with high-stakes deception. But again, we're not talking about high-stakes deception that occurs in our everyday communication, such as that affair, right, or, stealing from your employer, things that are actually going to affect all of us, or could, I shouldn't say that. I hope they don't affect us, but are probably more likely to affect us than the case of, being a police detective and trying to pick up on criminal activity and nonverbal deception. So we're going to move on from that and move on to the last portion of this chapter, which is about the deception process. So there's 4 different kind of components of the process. The first one is this issue of the deceiver. And this is the first time in this chapter where they really address what I talked about earlier, as far as being concerned that if I teach you how to detect deception, you will therefore become a better deceiver, right? And this is all about mimicking the honest demeanor bias. And the honest demeanor bias is recognizing that we believe certain things about people and communicating honesty, such as looking people directly in the eye. Therefore, if I want to appear as if I'm telling you the truth, I'm going to look you in the eye, right? So I'm lying to you, but I'm looking at you directly in the eye. Okay, so we will fake that. So we are using the honest demeanor bias to kind of manipulate people. They also look at the motivation to deceive, and that's where it ties into, are we trying to deceive you to hurt you, to get away with something, to be sneaky, or are we actually trying to save your face, right, and be kind to you? They then talk about the channel and the context, right? And they talk about the receiver. And the receiver end of it is, I actually feel like the most heartfelt and genuine, moment of this chapter, where they talk about what we have is these truthful judging bias, and that we really tend to believe that most people are honest with us. Okay, which is why on the surface we're not that great at detecting deception, right? No more than really chance, but flipping a coin to say whether someone's lying or not. We believe in people. We believe people are telling us the truth. Okay, we give people the benefit of the doubt, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Have I been burned because people have lied to me and I've not known it at the time? Sure, right? But I would rather walk through life thinking that people are telling me the truth than everyone's lying to me. So that is my bias in that, and I enjoy buying into that sentiment. Glass is half full. People are truthful. People are honest. I know that isn't always the case. In regard to the channel and the context is where I want you to take the paper for this week. So I'm going to step outside of the box a little bit. What we really have not discussed in this entire textbook is the issue of nonverbally communicating online. Often because people think these things don't exist online, but with social media and FaceTime and Twitter and all these things, we are able to, communicate to the world, right? Endless possibilities. Given that this class is not focused on that, we haven't really discussed it. I want you to look at deception, though, with regard to online communication. So when we talk about the context and we talk about the different channel, how is deception different face-to-face than online? There's this notion that it's easier to be deceptive online, right? So I could, outside of pictures, right? Or I could even fake pictures, I guess. I could tell you that, I make 6 figures and I'm 100 pounds and, all these positive things, right, to get a date, okay, which is what is now called catfishing. So I want you to simply, very broadly, and this question is supposed to be broad, discuss what is deception like online versus face-to-face. And you can pick any topic. I give you a few, such as deception with regard to dating, right? So you maybe create a fake profile, such as catfishing, or simply lying, putting up the best pictures of yourself online. You could also compare to face-to-face, where they actually get to see you. You could talk about writing papers or cheating, right? Academically, plagiarism, source credibility. Really, it's open to interpretation. So all I want to know very broadly is, what are your views? Is it different? Do we deceive more? Do we deceive less? What's the different types of deception? I mean, this is supposed to be broad and open-ended, which I know is making some of you very nervous, because you're thinking, how can I write for 2 pages on this? But this is the first time I'm going to just open-ended it, and I want to hear your thoughts on deception, on deception, or maybe the detection of deception online versus face-to-face. Next week, we're going to be talking about nonverbal communication in the interview process. Okay, so we're moving on to chapter 12. Oh, no, we're moving on to chapter 13. No, I was right, chapter 12, sorry. Chapter 13, we are skipping. Okay, so we're moving on to chapter 12, which is nonverbal communication in the interview process. Look forward to seeing you and reading your papers. Thanks, and have a great week.